So, how does a company that's been around for over 120 years, the folks who gave us post it notes and all sorts of futuristic materials, how do they handle a once in a generation global meltdown? Today, we're going to dig into how 3M navigated that absolute tornado of a supply chain crisis. This was a test that brought even the most resilient companies to their knees. To really get how 3M made it through that storm, you've got to start right here. This quote, it's from their legendary leader, William McKnight, and it's not just some feel-good poster on a wall. It's basically their source code. It tells you everything you need to know. For them, resilience, and yeah, even making mistakes isn't just okay. It's literally built into the company's DNA.
Okay, picture this. It's April 2022. We're 2 years into the pandemic, and the world is just chaotic. A 3M executive, Kevin McGugan, is sitting in his Singapore office looking at these absolutely insane reports about container shortages, freight rates going through the roof. The whole world is caught in this supply chain tornado, and he's smack in the middle of it, probably just thinking, when is this going to end?
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll dive deep into what makes 3M tick, that unique innovation DNA. Then, we'll look at how they strategically built out their global operations. And here's the kicker. They were in the middle of a massive internal transformation right when the pandemic hit, a total head-on collision. We'll see how they handled that chaos, and it all leads up to this one huge question that every global company is asking right now.
All right, first up, what is it about 3M that makes them so tough, so resilient? Well, the answer isn't buried in some dusty crisis manual. Nope, it's baked into the 100-plus years of innovation that made the company what it is today. Believe it or not, 3M didn't start with some brilliant idea. It actually started with a massive failure. Seriously, back in 1902, they tried to start a mining company, but the mineral they were digging for turned out to be completely worthless. That early disaster basically gave them an ultimatum: innovate or go bust. And that pressure, that need to survive, is what took them from a failed mine all the way to inventing something as iconic as Scotch tape. And the engine driving all that creativity? It's this legendary idea, the 15% culture. So back in 1948, they made it official policy. Employees can use about 15% of their time to work on their own passion projects, whatever they're curious about. And you gotta understand, this isn't just some nice little park. It's basically a company-wide, bottom-up R&D department. It's how we got game changers like the Post-it note. So when you put all these pieces together, you start to see that 3M isn't just a company. It's more like a system, a machine, that's designed to just keep innovating forever. I mean, they protect their inventions like crazy, with over 100,000 patents. They constantly pump money back into R&D, about 6% of their sales. They have this divide and grow mindset, spinning off new ideas into their own divisions. And on top of all that, they've built a culture where talented people actually want to stick around for the long haul. Okay, so you've got this incredible innovation machine. But how do you take that and make it work all over the world? As 3M grew and went global, they realized they had to completely rethink how they were set up. At first, 3M went with what you could call a local-for-local strategy. Basically, the office in each country did its own thing. They had a ton of autonomy. But that got complicated. So over time, they made a huge shift to a region-for-region model. This meant setting up these powerful hubs that would manage the supply chain and operations for an entire region. It was a move from everyone for themselves to a much more integrated, efficient system. So why bother with such a big change? Well, the numbers really speak for themselves. The bigger regional plants, they turned out to be up to 40% more productive. Those regional distribution centers, they cut delivery times by 20 to 25%. And maybe most importantly, by spreading out their production, they weren't so vulnerable if one single factory got hit by a local crisis. It was just a smarter way to reduce risk. And their hub in Singapore is a perfect example of this strategy working. I mean, the location is great, but the real game changer came during the pandemic. The incredible support from the Singaporean government. This partnership meant 3M could keep its factories running 24/7. And crucially, they could keep exporting essential products even when other countries were slamming their borders shut. That one advantage? It turned out to be an absolute lifeline. All right, so get this. 3M is right in the middle of this huge internal overhaul, a 5-year plan to become even more streamlined, even more agile. And then, boom. The world basically changes overnight. Let's rewind to 2019 for a sec. The CEO, Mike Roman, he kicks off this super ambitious 5-year plan to make 3M leaner and faster. It had 4 main pillars: fine-tuning their product portfolio, sparking more innovation, transforming their operations, and investing in their people and culture. They thought they were getting ready for the next decade. Little did they know, their biggest test was just a few months away, not years. And the core of this whole plan was a pretty radical change to how they operated. They basically got rid of that complicated web of country managers and instead gave 4 global business groups total end-to-end control, all the way from the factory floor to the customer's hands. The goal? It was simple, really. Be faster, be more accountable, and be absolutely obsessed with serving the customer. So this brand new operating model, plus that century-old DNA of resilience we talked about, well, it was all about to get hit with the ultimate stress test. And what did that stress test look like? It looked like this number: 400%. That's right, an almost overnight 400% surge in demand for products like their N95 respirators. I mean, can you even imagine? It was a shock to the system unlike anything they had ever seen before. Absolutely unprecedented. And this insane spike in demand happened at the exact same moment the entire global supply chain was just falling apart. You had raw material shortages because of lockdowns in China, ports were completely jammed up, their own factories were trying to figure out social distancing. Heck, for their plants in Singapore, workers who commuted from Malaysia suddenly couldn't even cross the border. It wasn't just one problem, it was a cascade of crises, hitting them from every possible angle. And yet, despite all of that chaos, the comeback was incredible. I mean, look at these numbers. After a really tough 2020, where their electronics and transportation business took a major hit, 2021 was a whole different story, a massive recovery across the board. Take healthcare. It jumped from just 1% growth to nearly 9%. This shows they weren't just surviving, they were actively adapting and doing it fast. So the big question is, how on earth did they pull that off? Well, they got very, very tactical. They started holding daily emergency response meetings just to fix problems as they popped up. They threw out the old long-term plans and switched to these agile 30, 60, and 90-day planning cycles. They even ate the extra cost to use air freight for critical products. They brought on new suppliers. And maybe the most important tool they had? Their new digital system gave them a clear, real-time view of their entire global operation. And this whole ordeal, this whole trial by fire, it brings us to the fundamental question that's facing not just 3M, but basically every single global company out there right now. You know, it's really easy to look back and think of the pandemic as this crazy one-off event, a once-in-a-century storm. But that kind of misses the bigger picture. The crisis wasn't really the cause of all this instability. It was more like an accelerator. With everything going on, trade conflicts, geopolitical tensions, the old days of stable, predictable supply chains, they're probably over. The new normal is constant uncertainty. And that leaves us with this one big final question. For decades, the name of the game in global business was maximum efficiency, right? Just-in-time inventory, lean operations, cutting every last penny of cost. But in a world that's constantly being disrupted, is the smarter move to optimize for maximum adaptability, for resilience, even if that means things are a little less efficient, a little more expensive? 3M's story suggests the answer is probably a balance between the two. But figuring out where that balance lies, well, that's the great challenge for every business in the years to come.